Hey everyone, welcome back to Private Club Radio. I'm your host, Denny Corby. Thank you so much for listening in. This is a urgent episode. No, this is all about the GA4 update, which is the Google Analytics 4 update that is happening on July 1st, 2023, depending on what year you are listening. But they are switching up their entire platform. They are throwing out the whole playbook, completely redoing how they are doing Google ads. I legitimately thought all the emails and stuff I was getting was like a spam, like a scam they were trying to get me, but it is not. It is a real thing that's happening and not just affecting my data, but all of our datas for all of our websites and all the analytics and all of the behind the scenes stuff, the things that we've been gathering for years and years about clients and customers and all that fun stuff. When I was talking to my buddy Sean Blyle over at Members First, he brought up this. And I thought he was joking. And then he told me, I said, hey, we have to help everybody with this. We talk a bit about what the new update is, what it entails, and why it's important. And then at the end, it only takes a couple minutes, but we walk through exactly how you can do it yourself on your club site to save all of your precious data. So let's get right to it. Everybody, welcome my friend, Sean Blyle from Members First. All right. So we're here. We're in the Members First studio here on Private Club Radio, talking with my man, Sean Blyle. Might edit that out. We'll see. I don't know how that sounded. In my head, it sounded good, but I don't think it's going to sound good. So we're talking about the Google Analytics 4 GA4 update. I'll be honest, like I legitimately had no clue about this. I got the emails coming in, but anytime I get something from like Google, I just assume it's like suspicious malware that got through my spam filter, and I just like don't even open it because I'm like, oh, they're just hacking, trying to get me to log in through their special thing. So I just ignored all of this. And then last week you told me about it, and the very next day I got that email, and I was like, oh no, this is wild. And I was like, we have to do this because I didn't do it. And I know I'm not a club, but I was like, we got to teach people how to do this. And then you were like, Den, we can do it. It's super easy, but more importantly, it's very important. So if people who don't know you, you're with Members First, which is a phenomenal organization, and you're from the private club world. So you work for Members First doing client development, but you have a private club background. Can you give us a quick little update, like the 30,000 foot view?
Yeah, and certainly thank you, Danny, for having me on this morning. So yeah, I've spent about 12 years ish at Members First, helping clubs kind of unravel and peel back the onion to help them engage with their members online. Everything from kind of website design to social media strategy to anything that goes into your digital experience. Yeah, so I spent the last 12 years at Members First, helping clubs, enhance their digital experience. That could be anything from, helping them with their website design, helping them engage with their members online. We've actually just introduced a new member onboarding program, which has been super fun to see how members are engaging with their clubs online, and it actually saves the membership and marketing directors a ton of time. But prior to Members First, I spent about 10 years in the private club industry, working for a Boston-based golf management and real estate development company. So the first part of my career was super fun because that company sent me everywhere. I got a chance to work at some super high-end clubs that were only doing 50, 60 rounds a day, which was really interesting. And then also working at some really high volume resorts where, we were pushing through 300 plus rounds a day over 27 holes. But the interesting part is that, the clubs that do less rounds are actually more high touch. So I always found that it was more challenging and exciting too, because you were able to really get to know those members that were coming through, and you needed to know that this member liked a Budweiser at the turn, but he liked a martini after his round, right? So there was a lot of things that you needed to know at those private clubs, but there's benefits of both. And I enjoyed my time as a club operator. I am still a member of the CMAA. I'm a member of the New England chapter, so shout out to any of those New Englanders out there. But
can you show us your mug quick?
Oh,
as
that's
you
not.
as you talk about New England being this whole big thing. I love New England.
So
From the
okay.
area, I'm part of CMAA. Yeah, let's see your mug, Sean.
Okay, so I have two things here. So we've got, I drink my coffee out of the Carolinas chapter mug. Thank you for calling me out on that one. However, guess what I drank a beer out of last night? So the New
What?
England chapter actually gave us logoed beer mugs as an annual gift. So ultimately, I think of the Carolinas in the morning and New England at night. But I'm going to have to talk to my friends down in the Carolinas because, we'll be heading down there for the summer conference pretty soon. So we will have to we'll have to chat about that. But from being in the club industry, it's actually it's a lot of fun to be able to work on both sides of the industry because I do try to take my club operations knowledge from being in the industry for so long and apply that to helping clubs with their digital strategy because this is a really, really unique business where if you don't know what the people are going through on the other end of the call, it's really hard to help them. And so most of the people, luckily, at Members First come from the private club industry. And for those people on our team that don't have experience in the operations world at private clubs, they rely on people like myself, Victoria Burns, Kevin Baer, Don Taylor, and a variety of other people at Members First that have worked in clubs to bring them up to speed. So we're kind of all learning from each other as well, in addition to learning from our clients, which kind of keeps us on our toes, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we are partners, friends together here in Private Club Radio and Members First, and obviously I did some stalking before we signed the papers and all that stuff. And it's funny that you mentioned a lot of the people going through being in the club world, because that's what I noticed is when I was going through and seeing people who worked at Members First, most people had some weird connection, not weird connection, but some connection to a private club. I think there was one or two people who maybe they're just a server or some small part, but they're still some connection back to a private club.
It helps out so much with our projects, and it's a great part of the industry to work in. So even though we're not working at a club, we feel like we are, because we're talking with clubs all day long, learning what their challenges are and what's coming up in their board and committee meetings and things like that. So it's our job on this end to make sure that our clients are well prepared for what's next in the digital space, because there's just too many things going on in technology today that it's really hard to keep up. And and ultimately we all need to kind of learn together. So, which is why I'm super excited to, have you getting Private Club Radio back on board. And certainly it is, I've enjoyed and learned a ton from the episodes so far that you've launched out there. So, thank you for bringing it back to our industry.
Going back to the CMAA, I know when we were chatting about this, the updates, you've said how this was a big topic, the G4A, GA4, and you've been doing some talking, and this was a big hot topic at some of the conferences, yeah?
Yeah, one, I feel like I've lived on a plane for the last 6 months.
You've been traveling more than me,
which is hard to believe because you're at clubs all the time. But certainly the first part of 2023 has been extremely busy on the travel schedule, which is always great. It is when a lot of regional chapters are doing their educational events. And, it started off this year, of course, with, the World Conference in Orlando this year. But I was also asked to speak at the Communication Summit, the National CMAA Communication Summit, which was held in Houston this year, which, by the way, if you've never been to Houston, you need to go. So at the CMAA Communication Summit in Houston this year, it was awesome. It was, the event typically sells out. I think there was a little over 100 membership marketing directors, communications directors. There was a ton of general managers sprinkled into the audience as well, which was really great to see. But Kyle Jennings and Melissa Lowe from CMAA had asked me to do a presentation all around data analytics, because we had a very similar conversation like you and I had last week about Google Analytics and how to make data-driven decisions about your website, because Google Analytics is usually installed on everybody's website. And I can even show you a quick trick as to how to find out as well. But ultimately, I was a little bit nervous because they asked me to speak about an hour on data. Usually people can take about 15 minutes of data, and that's about it. And so what we tried to do is we kind of created these small chunks of how clubs are using Google Analytics to make better decisions on their site. And so if that topic is coming up at the national level for the CMAA Communications Summit, it is eventually, if not already, going to be sprinkling into all of the regional chapters. So the education kind of kicked off in March in Houston for the CMAA Summit. I just got back from Charlotte with the Carolinas chapter. I was down in Alabama for the Alabama chapter. And then we're doing a couple one-day workshops, some CMAA, CMI. So they're full-day education workshops, not just on the topics of data, but data is actually popping up quite a bit in those. The big update that you mentioned before, though, is all those emails that you've received. And Denny, just so you know, you're not alone. I can't tell you how many people have ignored those alerts. Right? Google Analytics is changing on July 1st, whether you like it or not. And if your club isn't spending time inside of Google Analytics, I really encourage you to do so, because there's so much data in there. For private clubs, more than likely they're going to want to be on a dedicated kind of platform that manages both the public and the private side of their website, because one, it's going to be easier for their membership and marketing and communications directors to manage content, but then they're also usually going to have the support of whoever their partner is to be able to provide them with some of the data analytics, provide them with help and guidance as to how to get these codes onto your website in order to start tracking this data. And like you said, you may or may not be doing AdWords through Google, so you may not necessarily need to get into, paying for those club advertisements. But even for those clubs that are not doing that, there's some really, really great information within Google that it's free, that you can actually add it to your website and get some really good content out of it.
And we're going to get straight to it now. And we were talking earlier. You were talking to a club, because we pretty much did it yesterday. You were showing me how easy. This is just mind blowing. You said there was a club you talked to. Their provider tried to charge them $750 to do this for them.
There was, yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Now, keep in mind, there could have been a variety of other things that they were doing. They could have been creating some custom filters. They could have been removing, internal IP addresses so it filters out staff traffic. There's so many different layers that could go into what you do within Google Analytics. But the actual act of converting your current Universal Analytics over to Google Analytics 4, it literally takes about 2 minutes. And the hard part sometimes is making sure that you're getting it loaded onto your website so that it's on every single page of your website. But most of the industry tools out there have spots where you literally just copy and paste the measurement ID into the platform, and it usually starts tracking data within 48 hours. Now, the interesting part is that Google announced this update 3 years ago. And then 2 years ago, they sprinkled it out there a little bit more. And then last year, they basically said, hey, the drop dead date for all of your data through Google Analytics, through their current platform, is going to end on July 1st, 2023. And so they are encouraging people to do this sooner than July 1st. But keep in mind, we are helping our clients. I converted 5 clubs yesterday just to help them get started on that area. If you don't convert it manually, it will automatically convert on July 1st. even though Google Analytics will convert you automatically from Universal Analytics over to Google Analytics 4, so they will create a new tracking code for you. However, the step that the club needs to make, the club needs to reach out to their website partner and make sure that that code is getting added to their platform. Because if you have a new account and you don't attach it to your website, it really doesn't do anything for you.
And this is like a whole new platform too, right? Like, so with the G4, I keep seeing G4, GA4, it's a whole new platform. So they're completely revamping, redo everything that they've done. They threw out the playbook.
They did, yeah. So one of the major updates, which is really different compared to what they've done in the past.
What are the advantages of this new GA4 update? Like, what's going to be different about it? Why do they change the whole platform? So
the shift in platform is how they're actually tracking different conversions on their site. So in the previous version, what they were doing is creating everything on page views and different sessions, which those items are still available, but everything that you do within GA4 is actually an event now. So what most people are doing, what most people are tracking within the platform is not only where people are coming from on the website, so how are they getting there? So it could be anything from device. Are they traveling to your website via mobile, desktop, or tablet? Are they getting there from different areas of the country? So when members are actually traveling north and south, east and west, depending on the season, ultimately membership and marketing directors are using this information to get a good understanding as to where their people are when they are visiting their website. So that information actually is really helpful for those clubs that have a very long off season, like up here in New England, where sometimes people will stop producing content on their website. And when they stop producing content on their website in the wintertime up here in Boston, ultimately they're really missing out on a lot of member engagement, because the data shows you that a lot of users are still going to your website in the off season. So geography is really key, because then you can also know more than likely where your members are going in the off season, so that you can keep in touch with them, periodically throughout there. Or potentially the membership and marketing directors, if you're really savvy, you are connecting with those sister clubs that maybe your members belong to down south or up north, because then you can start those relationships and get a good understanding as to what the members are experiencing at their second club when they're not at their home club. And correct me if I'm wrong. I was trying to understand it a little bit too, since you're the expert. So in the past with Google Analytics, if I went to Members First website, no matter where and let's just say I did it home, boom, I went on the website. Now, if I go to Florida and I go back on the website, it doesn't register in Florida. It just knows I went to the website in my home of Scranton, PA. So so no matter where I'm at, it's just going to go a ping from Denny because he was in Scranton. But now with the new update, it's going to be every time you do that new event, it's going to show where it's coming from, no matter if they went to the site first time at home and now they're in Arizona, or vice versa. Yes? That's correct. Now, It's not going to understand if it's Denny Corby visiting the website, because it's going to be tracking based off of your, a couple different things. It could be your IP address, it could be your internet service provider. So there's a variety of different things that it could be, using to detect that data. And ultimately, you're going to be able to start seeing your traffic patterns as to where your members are traveling and how and when they're accessing the website. Now, the other interesting thing that I've found when people are tracking data within Google Analytics, and this is common within the Google Analytics Universal platform, which is the existing one, or the new GA4 platform, you can also start to find out what is your referral traffic. So what other websites or what other platforms are driving traffic to your website? And I think that that's actually really, really important for your membership and marketing directors to know at private clubs, because I was recently working with a club in Florida, and there was a real estate agent who was driving so much traffic to that club's website. And that club was not a bundled community. It had no real estate associated with it. So I went down the rabbit hole and said, hey, if this person, this real estate agent, is driving traffic to the club's website, my first thought was, how are they doing that? And ultimately, that real estate agent had an incredible blog, created incredible content, and she and her team were introducing people to clubs in the area that they could potentially join. So her content was really great. But then the second thing I thought about was, I wonder if the club even knows they have a best friend.
Probably not.
And they didn't.
Ooh.
And it was really interesting because, it doesn't mean that you need to, become best friends with this person, but wouldn't you want to know if there is somebody in your community creating incredible content? Hopefully it's accurate content, and in this case it was.
That's good.
But if they're going to be driving traffic to your website, then ultimately, whoever it is, maybe it's the membership director, the communications person, the general manager, the golf professional, reach out to that person. Say thank you. Invite them over for lunch. Provide them with the information about your community so that as they're creating content, they're going to be pushing and recommending your club. So I think that's extremely helpful when you can look at who are your best friends in the community. And now that could be anything from a real estate agent, that could be, photographers for weddings and events. It could be the local person in the community that does custom cakes for kids' birthday parties. It could be anything. But if those companies are driving traffic to your website, you should be aware of it. On the flip side of it, you can also find out what other platforms are driving traffic to. So if your club is heavily engaged on social media and you're creating content that's driving people back to your website, ultimately you would want to know, hey, is the content that you're producing on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever social media platform that you're on, is the time you're dedicating to that content, is that successful? And is that driving traffic back to your website? Now, there's a whole strategy discussion on social media that we will not cover today. Because,
I was going to say we can go down a rabbit hole real quick.
Yeah, we're not going to do that because a lot of times different platforms have different purposes. And you may be active on the platform, but if your content isn't linking back to your website, it's really hard for Google Analytics to know, hey, is this working? But I did have, this came up yesterday with a client in Florida where they do their digital newsletters on a kind of a digital platform called Flipping Book. It's kind of that, it's those newsletter platforms that when you flip the page, it sounds like it's flipping the page, kind of fun. But, they had asked a question about, well, is there analytics on that? And I said, well, unfortunately, it's not on your website, so I wasn't able to tell if it was successful or not. However, her and I jumped into it, and it was interesting because within her Flipping Book platform, there was an area where she could paste a Google Analytics 4 tracking code so that now she can get that information specifically for her digital newsletter. So some of this data goes beyond just your website. It could be in a variety of different platforms that you're using.
So would that mean if they attach the GA4, can you also track then how many pages they went through, or just that they went to the Flip site?
So I don't know that Flipping Book software platform. Gotcha. However, the conversation did snowball a little bit, and we started looking at the digital newsletter. And ultimately, within their digital newsletter, I encouraged them to make sure that within their digital newsletter, they were providing links that drove people back to the website. Because then you can start tracking whether or not your Flipping Book or your digital newsletter is driving people back to the website. Because let's face it, where are members making reservations? So if in your digital newsletter or your email, if you are talking about the July 4th event, you want to be able to put a link there to click to register, and that will drive them back to the website. So there's two areas where you would want to focus on. So that's a lot of our clients are paying attention to Google Analytics through, their referral traffic. So one, it's really great to know kind of geography, like the location, where are people coming from? When are they visiting the website? That type of information.
Yeah.
Who's driving traffic and referring traffic to your website? But usually the most asked question is, well, what are they doing once they get to our website? And in that case, you actually go into some of the page reports, so you can actually dive in to find out the most visited pages on your website. And if you know the most visited pages on your website, then ultimately you can make decisions as to, wow, I didn't realize that this page was being visited so often. Is there a call to action to drive them to register?
Wow.
Or if this page is being visited so often, how many clicks does it take to get to that page? And we worked with a club recently that was having staffing issues, like most companies and most clubs these days, right? And ultimately, their employment page was in the top 20 most visited pages. But it took them 5 clicks to get to that employment page. And then once you got to that employment page, ultimately it was a lot of like rules and restrictions, and it said, hey, you get dental benefits, which are kind of the obvious things, or you would hope. And so we took a look at that and said, hey, how about we make this a little bit more visual and make it easier to get to? And so what we did is we redesigned that employment page. We changed it to a join the team page, which is a little bit more inviting. And when you now go to that page, you can easily fill out an application, hear from current employees how great of a place it is to work. You can see the scholarships that their members provide to those employees, which I think is really, really great.
It's
genius. All the great things that clubs do, but sometimes very rarely talk about it. And so I went back last week, and 6 months ago, it was in the top 20 pages. Now it's in the top 5 most visited pages on their website. It's incredible. Now, what would they do with that information? I think, one, it justifies the time and effort that their marketing director spent creating that page. And then from my perspective, I would track how many people filled out applications from that page, how many of them became employees, and then I'd go back 3 years later and find out, hey, are those some of our best employees? Potentially. Now, that goes down the rabbit hole of how you track long-term data,
Yep.
But that's just one example of how people could use that information on their website to make their website more engaging for their users, whether it's on the public side of the website or on the private side.
And, for me, this is so overwhelming because there's so many rabbit holes and so much data and so much to do. And obviously, shameless plug. I mean, this is pretty much why people work with you all at Members First, is having that, that team member, that friend, that confidant next to you going, hey, here's what you should be doing. Hey, here's the data and here's what to do with the data. And here's how to do unique things. Hey, here's what other clubs are doing. Here's what other clients of ours are doing. And, they did X, just like with you and the, join our team, went from top 20 to top 5 pages. I mean, and helping them make that change and maneuver and adapt. I think that's really, really powerful.
And we've had to learn it together too, because even since March, Google Analytics 4, some of the interface has changed. So once I thought I learned it, I've had to go back and relearn it again. And there are some things in there that are a little bit more difficult in GA4 than they were within Universal Analytics. But the more you get into the platform, the more you're going to get comfortable with it. And the more information you're going to be able to provide to those people who, if they're not already asking you, they will be, because committee members and managers, they want data to support the decisions that they're making, whether it's within club operations, but that is trickling into the club marketing world, where ultimately you want to find out where you're spending your time, and you want to spend it extremely efficiently. And in my experience, I don't want to be spending time creating content on pages that nobody is viewing.
Right.
I want to spend time on creating content on pages that are heavily trafficked. Make sure that there's a call to action on every single page on your website, whether it's on the public side or the private side. Even if it's just a connect with us or follow us on social, there should be a call to action on every single page. And you just don't want to be spending time where nobody's going.
Right. So is it really that easy to switch this over?
It is, as long as you have the right access. So one of the things that you need is, one, you need to be able to have access into Google Analytics, which is pretty simple to create. All you need is a Google account. It can either be a Gmail account, or you can create a Google account with your own work address. But once you get access into the platform, one, if it's the first time you've logged in, you'll have a big timer right in the middle that'll say, hey, there's a big countdown clock to July 1st, and that's how much time you have. Mm-hmm. If you X out of that and ignore that alert, that's okay. They're still going to put a big begin migration tab up here, which will help you start the migration process. But where that actually takes you is to the GA4 assistant within the admin tools. So once you click on the GA4 Setup Assistant, you'll say, I want to create a Google Analytics 4 property. And what it's going to do is it's going to create that property, but it's going to connect it to your Universal Analytics account.
Okay.
So when you create the property, it'll give you a few different settings in here. But the main thing you'll want to do is just go to the property. And once that loads up, there's a variety of other kind of tools within Google Analytics. But the thing that you're going to want to, once this loads up, you can cut that up. It's nice when Google sometimes has loading issues. So once you go to the Google Analytics property, you're going to want to look for something called a data stream. So once you go to the data stream, it's going to give you it will give you the measurement ID. So once you copy the measurement ID, then you're going to want to reach out to your website platform partner to be able to add that code to every single page within the website. So at Members First, this is how easy it is. So if you were to create that data stream, you would literally reach out to your client services manager, provide them the code. They would go into the corporate area of our sites, click on, in our world, General Site Config, and I would search by that name.
This is so easy.
And we have just a quick tool. We have a quick tool in here called Analytics, and you literally paste the code within here and hit save. So what that does is that within our platform at Members First, that adds it to every single page on the website. Now, keep in mind, any other website partner out there within our industry should have those tools to make it just as easy. However, you're going to need to create that data stream, find that measurement ID, and send them the code in order for them to add it to the site. So once it's done, usually what happens is that the Google Analytics code will start tracking website data on your website, usually within 48 hours. And then you, of course, want to give it a few weeks to start gathering some data before you start analyzing it. Right. And if anybody needs a quick step guide, Denny, we've got a quick start guide that we're more than happy to share with any of your audience to guide them through the process to create their Google Analytics 4 property, find that measurement ID. That way they can send it over to their website platform provider.
Where can they get this quick start guide?
It's funny you should ask. You could actually go to our website, www.membersfirst.com/GA4. It's an easy way to get that quick start guide. And also, that is where you can actually subscribe to Private Club Radio.
And connect with you on LinkedIn, and all of us. You can join the happy family we have here. How can people find you online, Sean? Because, it's the same thing. We can go down the rabbit hole and talk about different things for hours, because you and I have. But, how can people find you? Where do you want them to find you?
To be honest with you, the easiest way to find us, of course, our entire team, you can go to, of course, membersfirst.com. You can always follow me on LinkedIn, which is where we're pretty heavily active on LinkedIn, posting, industry educational content, because we're learning at the same time that our clients are. And it's our job to help them stay ahead of the game. But you can find me on LinkedIn. Certainly, you can always shoot me an email. It's just Sean, SEAN, @membersfirst.com.
Scene.
I did have somebody ask me one time if that was how you pronounce my name.
When I was a kid, that bothered me. Like, my mind was blown when I met a Sean. He's like, SEAN. I was like, wait, what?
And that's the only way I knew how to spell it growing up. So I'm always excited when I do see when the Seans of the world are spelled correctly. The steps to creating the Google Analytics 4, content can be overwhelming. But I do have a quick start guide if anybody wants that too.
Yep. And that's membersfirst.com/GA4.
Correct. And so within that, jump over to that page. Certainly there's a 6-step guide as to how to create your account. And then ultimately, if you need help adding it to your website, please reach out to me. Let me know. Certainly, if you're a Members First client, I can do it pretty easily. But even if you're not a Members First client, I can guide you through the process as to how to obtain the code, create the account, and then you can certainly send it over to your website partner.
But that's part of the reason why I love you all at Members First, and you there is. It's just conversations. It's not like, hey, reach out and we're going to sell you some stuff. It's like, no, like, reach out. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to see how we can help. And I just love how helpful you are to so many people. So, if you are interested, reach out. Even if it's more on like maybe data questions too. I know we're trying to keep this just GA4, but you're like a pretty open book and willing to help most people with whatever they got going on. Point them in the right direction.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate you having us on.
Talk to you soon, sir. Hope you all enjoyed that episode. Please reach out to Sean. He is an amazing resource. I am so happy to call him my friend because he does so many great things for the industry. Head over to membersfirst.com/GA4, membersfirst.com/GA4. You can get your guide there, and it'll show you very quickly how you can get it done and keep all your data saved. So head on over. As always, any engagement is much appreciated. A like, share, a rate, subscribe, any and all. Join in on the party. I'm over on LinkedIn a lot. I'm your host, Denny Corby. Catch you next time.